So it's great to be here and to be celebrating one of my oldest friends, one of my best friends, somebody I really like a great deal for his work and for himself. Look, I'm an old man, not quite as old as David, but I'm a fairly old guy. And I was an undergraduate student in 1969 to 1970, doing a sandwich degree. And in that year, I was doing a research project on role theory. And then in 1970, in October, I found myself doing the final year of my degree at Aston University. And there was a subject on the sociology of organizations. Now, the guy who was teaching this was a really nice fellow, but he'd just been appointed, and like most people just get appointed, he'd been given the short end of the stick. And he obviously had to put this course together in very short notice. And I suspect he probably didn't know much about it because I don't think it was his area. So what it consisted of was reading to us in the class great tracts of American systems theory. And I thought it was awful. I mean, I just couldn't, it was boring. It was like porridge that hadn't been properly cooked and digested. It was awful. But early in the term, it would have been sometime, I don't know when David's book was actually published in 1970, but it must have been around October or November. I walked into the library in the Department of Industrial Administration, which was in an office block above Maple's Furniture Store in inner city Birmingham, not very salubrious. And they used to put the new books that they'd received in the library standing on the desk. And here was this, the theory of organizations. So I took it out of the library. It saved my life. I mean, in the work that I'd been really interested in, I'd been reading about Schutz. I was a real Weberian. One of my tutors, Colin Fletcher, had said I should look at Garfinkel. So I started to look at Garfinkel. And it connected. It enabled me to get through this course on sociology of organizations because I was able to make connections between this substantive area and the sociological theories which excited me and were interesting for me. So, you know, people often say books change lives, but to an extent, David's book really helped me. I think if I hadn't had the theory of organizations, and I told him this when the very first time I met him, I don't know if you remember that, David, that if I hadn't had access to the theory of organizations, I probably wouldn't be here today and speaking to you today. So it really did make a big difference to me, and I've always appreciated it. I had a look at the book again yesterday, going through it again, looking at it, looking at my notations on the margins of the book, and yeah, it was really the chapter in the middle, the action frame, which I didn't really understand properly at the time, but it excited me, and I got references, I got excitement, I got insight from it. So my job here today is simply to say, from one old bloke to another, thanks a lot, mate. You really, really made a difference. So there you go.
So Stewart and I we decided that discussion was far too complicated, so sequential monologues would be a lot more easy. So the other day, like a lot of us, I think I desperately scrambled to try and find theory of organizations again to remember what the hell was in it. And I thought I'll just have a little look at the reviews at the time. And two were popped up. One was by Tom Burns and another one was Charles Perrow. And it was interesting how the debates haven't shifted. You know, it was the Goldilocks phenomenon again, not too warm, not too hot. Suddenly there's a bit too much structure, there's a bit too much agency, right? And what was happening, I was at the University of Warwick at the time, and the book came into a machine. And the machine were the interesting gossipy fights that we were having at Warwick, right? So at that stage, John Heritage was there. All the women fell in love with him at the time because he was remarkably good looking at that time. And but he was condemned by 2/3 of the department as not being a sociologist and shouldn't be in the department at all. And meanwhile, the department was headed up by John Rex, who was pro-Weber, and all the Marxists hated the Weberians. And so the background were these incredible fights. And then my supervisor, Margaret Archer, ran a seminar series on micro-sociology and micro-sociology versus macro-sociology. And I came to the conclusion after about 6 months of this that nobody has the faintest idea 5 years after a debate about structure and agency what the hell anybody was saying. Is that she became famous because she was translating Giddens for people. And then people had to concentrate on what Margaret Archer was saying. But when you actually started trying to find out what people understood about Margaret Archer, there wasn't that much clarity, other than the fact that too much structure, too much agency kept on popping in. And I found in the reviews, it was quite nice. There was a nice debate about sticks, right? So, and the sticks were that Charles Perrow was saying, what about power? Who are the people who actually exert the power to define the situation that informs the actor perspective? And he was talking about real sticks, whereas apparently David had mentioned symbolic sticks in the middle of the thing, saying, well, you know, it's about symbolic sticks, not the real sticks that underline. So there was this debate, and I funnily enough, at the time, I thought, I'm not interested in structure versus agency, because the grand theorists in sociology were trying to do something. They were trying to transform society, and you got structure versus agency as an attempt to explain and intervene. So actually, social persistence, social change was more interesting. And I started spending my time on industrial society and capitalism and things like that. But I've kind of reversed my decision now, having gone through a couple of decades of dealing with MBAs. The depth to which our overly rational view, our reified views of structures, environment, whatever, the degree to which that reification is there, we need strong doses of action. Oh, and here's the dog. I told you somebody about it. Look, the dog is now here. Right, so we need strong doses of anti-reification. So for me, I used to love Steve Woolgar and the way in which he was actually just stimulating. He was deconstructing what other people took to be reality. And people got very upset when he started doing the deconstruction, and the being upset kind of interested me. You then got to say, why is it that people are upset, and what's the patterning of the meanings and all the rest of it? But I actually think this whole process of stressing action and de-reifying, which was something that David's book was kind of controversial for doing at the time, is absolutely essential, and we need to keep revisiting it. So while a lot of us are grumpy old men, and I won't make any reference to Barbara about being either grumpy or something, but yes, things haven't changed, but we have to actually redo it again. It's the later structure agency thing that we have to and I think in that process, uncovering and de-reifying what people are taking to be reality is really crucial. And that to me was the message of the book. The book was doing that at the time, and even though it hadn't solved the problem, it was performing a really, really interesting role.